So just wait for it to catch up on Instagram. There's always a little lag, isn't there, between the two?
Yeah.
Come on. Okay, here we go. We should now be live.
Hello.
Yeah,
it says live.
Anyway. Good.
Oh, well,
How are you,
glad it's Friday, as always.
I know, yeah, I'm me. I'm glad it's Friday too. I've got a lot to catch up on this weekend. But we're back. We wasn't here last week, and I missed doing it actually. But we weren't here. But we're back this week, talking about collaboration over competition as a virtual assistant. And next week we've got a special guest, Leanne Wright, who's managed to build a 6-figure VA business. And she's done that by diversifying and adding additional revenue streams to her business. So it's going to be well worth tuning in for that one, because I'm sure she's going to give lots of ideas on how you can start to build an ecosystem of income streams within your VA business. But but today we're talking about collaboration over competition. So what's your personal opinion on how do you feel like coming into the VA world? Do you feel like it's a supportive community? Do you feel like it's a collaborative community? Have you felt that it's very competitive, or do you feel that people are quite helpful towards one another?
It varies, I think. Like, there's been times when, quite a while ago, I used to post in this VA group about like just asking questions and things. And although you get positive responses, there are quite a lot of people that are negative. And I think that it's the same with any industry, isn't it, or business, that you do have that competition. And, you know, I'm a very helpful, person anyway, so I would help anybody do anything. But there are people out there that would literally claw your eyes out to get a client from you. I feel like that sometimes anyway.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that it is a bit of both. I personally feel like if you can get into the right communities and the right groups, it's really quite collaborative. I think especially there's Darren's VA community on Facebook, absolutely fantastic Facebook group. And all the VAs in there, I feel are really, I say all of the VAs, I have had pushbacks off some people, but it's not competition, it's just how they do things. But I feel that VAs generally pass business to one another. People are generally quite helpful when VAs are just starting out. They're asking questions, and I do find that people go out of their way to respond, be helpful. So I feel that it is a real, actual collaborative space on the whole. And I think where it gets difficult is like what you've just said, when they really need clients, and it's when you probably start working with associates.
I think so. And I think because there's, particularly if you don't know somebody, like I work with another girl, Katie, helping her out with some social media. But we've never met, but we've been friends and, colleagues, and worked together for about 9 years now. And we have that understanding. I'd never steal a client from anybody anyway. You know what I'm like. I would be mortified if I'd never do anything like that. But there are people that would do that out there. And I think it's about that trust, isn't it? When you don't know somebody, you can do as much research on somebody as you possibly can, but you have to build that element of trust with somebody. And that's what I think people are frightened of when they take on associates. It's about, as we know, it's about having that element of trust with somebody immediately. You've got to build it, the relationship's got to develop. But I think it's always in the back of your mind, isn't it? Well, if I collaborate with somebody, or I pass a client on, or, are they going to then go, well, come and work with me directly and I'll do it for cheaper, or I'll do this, blah, blah, blah. So I think there is that worry with people when they are taking on associates, or they are collaborating with other people, that client's going to be taken.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I think maybe you're right. Maybe from a distance, it's easy to be collaborative. And are we using the right terminology? Because when someone's posting in a group that they need support, that's not really collaboration, is it? Collaboration is working. Yeah, it's just giving advice. But collaboration is working on something together, and that includes, I think, working with associates. And I think you're right. So once you start, I mean, do VAs collaborate enough?
No.
I don't think they do, you know. I don't think enough VAs come together because I think the difficulty is if you go to another VA and it's not an associate, it's maybe a project type thing, or you said, why don't we work together to offer these services? There's that fear that that person's going to copy your services, get an inside look into how you're running your business, steal from you. You know, does that competition then kick in? Does the collaboration end there? I mean, I'm trying to think. I've met loads of VAs, and I've personally have been on calls with them that have needed. I was on a call last week with someone for like an hour and a half that just wanted some advice, and I love doing that. I love sitting with VAs, and then because I get all my ideas going, and I'm thinking about all the different ways that I could help them. And then I naturally think, oh, maybe I could give them some business. And that side of it, you know, it doesn't bother me one little bit. I'm more than happy to do that. But then I suppose, what could you do to collaborate with them? I think one of the ways you can collaborate with another VA is maybe, there are VAs out there at the moment that are running like groups where they meet up in person, and I've just been connected to somebody actually who's got a group, and they kind of do like a hangout, and they meet up for coffee, and they pass business to one another. And that's
I mean, that is, you know, there is a certain amount of trust already within that group, isn't there? Because, you know, you've built that up to go and meet them in person, and you know a lot about each other. But it's difficult, isn't it, to let somebody to sort of go that much further. You know, I post all the time with like in groups about VAs that are starting out and they're not sure what to charge, and I always, like, same as you, just say, you know, give them some tips and point them in the right direction and all that kind of thing. But when you're actively working alongside somebody, it is a worry. I would find it worrying. But I agree to a certain point that VAs don't collaborate enough, but for that reason.
Yeah, probably for that reason, you're right. But what if you did, and what could come out of it beneficially? What could be a positive from collaboration? Now, I think personally, collaborating with a VA agency that has skills that you don't have could be really powerful for you and for your business. So I think it's well worth exploring those opportunities and stepping outside of your comfort zone and having those conversations. Sometimes, I mean, we met a company once, didn't we, that they didn't call themselves VAs. It was more, they did more along the accounting side, because I think they did have accounting, you know, qualifications. But then alongside that, they were offering the same services that we were. So we had calls about, well, how could we pass business between one another? So I do feel like, you know, if there was an agency or a VA out there that had a particular skill set that I didn't have, or my VAs didn't have, then I would be well up for collaborating, because I think you could, you know, I'm trying to think about past guests like Wendy Norman with Speedy Calls UK. So we do, she offers an affiliate scheme for VAs that want to pass clients over for telephone answering. And we probably won't use that because we also offer telephone answering. However, if it was something that wasn't our core business, or it's something that we didn't offer, then I would be more than happy to sit down with somebody like Wendy and have a conversation about how we could collaborate with one another. I think collaboration is you each get something out of it. It's not like one person gets something out of it. But it's that it's a thing.
I am completely opposite. Yeah. I'm the complete opposite, because I often think, you know, if I was to collaborate with somebody for a service that I didn't offer, would that client then think, well, I've got two people, who's doing what, you know, or is it just worth having one person doing everything than two people doing it split? So I think for me, it's more, I personally wouldn't do it. But, you know, if I had a client came to me and said, can you do technical? I'd say no, and I'd give them to you because you could do technical. But that's because we've got a very strong trust relationship. But yeah, for me, it's a no. I couldn't do it.
But what about that it's not that the client ever has anything to do with the other company involved. That actually the way you collaborate is they, and this happens quite a lot, you kind of white label their services. So you could go to, thinking outside the box, let's say there's a VA company that, well, let's just bring Wendy into the mix, right, into Speedy Calls UK. And let's say we didn't offer telephone answering, but we wanted to offer that service to our clients. Well, we could probably negotiate a deal with somebody like Wendy to say, look, we want to offer this as a service to our clients, but we don't want them to know you're providing it. What deal could we cut where, you know, we white label your services, so you actually fulfill the work, and we pay you, but the client never has anything to do with you. And that happens a lot. Now, I haven't collaborated with other VAs on that, but I have got partners, like other people in other businesses, that if I want to, I can do that. So I've got a lead generation and sales company. We offer that as a service, but if somebody wanted something a lot more intense and they want to pay money, then I wouldn't touch that, and instead I'd go to this company and I'm going to basically, you know, white label their services. So we would still be offering it. They would never really meet those other people, but they would be undertaking the work. So what about collaboration in that way, where you still retain the control, but you utilize that company and have that kind of agreement
would you
together?
actually tell the client that you're doing that?
Well, clients don't necessarily need to know unless you're sharing their data. So you can have that in your terms and conditions. So you can say, you know, we occasionally utilise the services of other companies, blah, blah, blah. And I think you have a moral obligation to make sure the customer knows that other people on your team or externally are going to be accessing their data or logins or whatever. So I think, yes, you don't have to tell the client that you're utilising a whole other company and name that company, but what you can do is say to the client, some of the services that we offer, we work with partners and they will also need access and we will manage that. So, you know, I do think, and that's just true of a lot of companies. I mean, I, for example, had Wi-Fi fitted the other day with a company, Fresh Fibre, but the installers work with all different companies, so they don't with just that company. Do you know what I mean? They thought they were coming out to install for B Fibre actually, and started to put their own router in and all of this. So, you know, there are lots of companies that you probably don't even know you buy from, and they're just the face of it. They're not delivering.
It's a tricky one for me, because I still, you know, it's still that trust, the circle of trusts, as I call it, that, you know, I would still struggle with. And I'm not saying that people that collaborate with people is right, wrong, or whatever. That's just my opinion. It's just not something, because, you know, within business, you do have to have an element of trust, and that has to be built. It doesn't work overnight, as we well know, you know, and we have had issues with trust with certain people. And so I think for me, I would still always be really nervous, white label or not. Again, I'm not saying it's right or wrong or whatever. That's just, I would just be fearful of it.
Yeah. And I think that's just your nature as well.
Yeah.
I personally think if you are a VA and you could collaborate, you've got to do it carefully. You can't give away too much control, but I think it can be really beneficial to collaborate. So let's talk about the dark side of collaboration. And I think that is more when you are working probably with associate VAs or on project work, because we've had it happen to us a couple of times. And this isn't to put anyone off, actually quite the opposite. It's about learning what to do. So just to take you on this journey now, you know, like, it is difficult. So to this day, I have an all-in-one system that we run the entire business through, and we've customized it and made it into a system that is absolutely just for virtual assistants, and it's for our business, and we're working on something behind the scenes at the moment so that other VAs can get access to it. But sometimes I think I really could do with some expert VAs in this system, and I'm too scared to take them on in case they steal my ideas.
Yeah.
So it is a genuine fear. And if anyone listening has had any experience of collaboration with other VAs in a good or bad way, then just drop it in the comments. And going back, okay, so when I first started LTVA Services, I knew from day one that it was going to be an agency. I always knew that. So it was the one strategy I had in my mind. And the one thing I knew I was going to have to do is work with other people, because I knew from my past experience running my first business that I couldn't scale without a team. And so I had to put my trust in people very quickly. And there were 3 people I trusted within, I think, the first 12 to 18 months. One of them was a lovely lady called Elaine, who became on board as an associate, and another one was a lady called Tracy, and the third one was you. And I remember I was so lucky, actually, because both Elaine and Tracy were really trustworthy and lovely. And in fact, I made some fundamental mistakes. Like on my website, I remember putting the girls on there as meet the team with their company names. And Elaine contacted me and saying, don't you think this isn't probably the right thing to do? So it shows that there are people you can trust. And I remember when you applied, because they were my associates, but you were coming on board as an assistant for me. And that was really scary for me, because I knew that having a VA assistant would have more insight into my business. And how could I trust that VA not to then take away any ideas I had? And I remember not being sure about you. Sure, like on paper, I was like, oh, I don't know, I'm not sure. And I remember I think I got off calls a few times. And it wasn't until I had a call and I got to know you that I thought, no, I think this is going to be okay. And I think it was just because I had that fear. And then and you've been with me ever since. And that was years ago. And, like, you know everything about business.
Yeah.
But
you know what? Do you know what's funny though? Do you know what? Thinking about it, when I do give people advice, I don't ever give them an insight behind the business. Like, I don't share like ideas or anything like that. I just give advice. And that's what I mean. It's that trust, isn't it? Because, you know, you've worked your ass off to get where you are, and you know, and it's been difficult. We've been through like the amounts of shit we've been through over the last 4 years now.
Yeah.
And when you look at it, you know, again, it was that step, isn't it, to trust somebody. You didn't know me. We've only met twice.
I know,
in our entire journey, right? And you've become like my best friend. Like, you know everything about me. And there's nothing I can't say to you. And likewise, the conversations we've had. Oh my God, if only the walls could talk.
I know, yeah.
But yeah, Sissy, it's a trust thing.
It is, and taking that leap of faith and working with you the way I have, and we've changed things up a lot. We've gone backwards and forwards with the way the business model works, and we have collaborated rather than you being my assistant. And I'll come on to that in a minute. And if I don't, remind me, because I've got terrible perimenopause brain. But if I hadn't done that, I don't think my business would be where it is today. But to have your support and to have that person that I can rely on and bounce ideas off, who can pick me up when it's difficult, you know, and releasing my capacity by you taking on some of those roles means that I've been able to scale really quickly. So if I'd have just sat in a little dark hole, been like, no, I'm too scared to let anyone in and tell them all my ideas, and then I'd still be there. And that's part of the problem with seeing everybody as competition. At the moment, so you know, this year I launched a free VA membership. So More Than a VA is a community I've been trying to build. Sorry, there's some echo there. There's a community I'm trying to build, and it's mainly on Instagram, but we have got I Am More Than a VA Facebook page. But we've got a free community on there, and I recently started running some masterclasses, and this week I've been running a challenge all week. And one of the things I realised by running the challenge was I've been telling people they can copy my services, they can copy because I love it. And I think, Well, it doesn't really matter, does it? Like, what different? They could go on my website and copy things anyway, as long as it's me in control of that and people aren't just blatantly, doing what they want. But for me, well, we end up doing that anyway, don't we? I mean, I'm sure when we all start our VA businesses, we go out there and we look at what other people are doing.
Of course you do. Yeah.
It's different. And I'm like, I've told people really openly and honestly the struggles I've been through, where I am now, where I've been. And I think that's not a weakness. It's important if you really want to help people on their journey.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And I think being transparent like that gives people a sense of not security, but almost like a sense of comfort that, you are only human. You're not somebody going into a room and saying, I'm the best thing since sliced bread and I earn a 6-figure salary and I pick and choose who I work with, because that's not, if you are like that, then that's fine. But you're an open and honest person. And that's what I mean with, that it's appealing to trust somebody who is transparent. The fact that you are open and honest, that it's been shit sometimes and it's been difficult, and at some points we've both been like, and people find that appealing because you are open and honest. So that's where your trust kicks off. If you've got somebody who's an arrogant twat, then you're not going to want to work with them.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. So what happened to us when we got going and started bringing in associates, I'm able now in hindsight to reflect back and say I made a lot of mistakes, and I think that was part of the problem. So the first time I got kind of screwed over was we had a VA associate on the team that we were matching with a potential client. It would have been a big client, and she went away and had that initial call with them that we always used to set up. So we used to set them up on a call together initially. And then what we discovered, there was like, this was going on, and the client hadn't signed yet, and they were still having back and forth calls. And then I had an email. Actually, I ended up chasing her up and saying to her, like, what on earth is going on? Like, why on earth are you having so many conversations with this client? It's our client, and you were supposed to have one initial call. And she tried to say to me that, it's going to be really good for you. I think he's going to come back and pay you more. And I was like baffled by this. I'm a businesswoman. No one's going to offer to pay you more for a service where you've already given them the product. So I knew something was wrong. And then I had an email off the client basically saying to me that he was absolutely shocked and astounded that I was trying to rip off this girl.
Yeah.
Remember? And she'd had these multiple conversations with him where she made out that her fee would have been this much, but actually because the client's coming through me, it's going to be less, which is obvious because you're an associate. I can't pay the full rate, and she would have been able to do a much more a better job for him and put more quality and time into it if she was getting the full rate. And so he was saying, I think it's disgraceful that you're making this much profit off her, and that you should pay her this, that, and the other. And I was like, one, don't tell me how to run my business, and number two, if you knew how to run a business, you'd know that's not how it works. That's not profit. When I'm paying to acquire that client and for the marketing and all of that kind of stuff to go into getting that partnership together, I'm paying for that. And I was just like, honestly, I just couldn't believe it. But I didn't want to work with that client anyway, and I think they obviously went off together. So she was gone then. But you know what the good thing was from that? I learned a lot. I learned that we had to not allow those kind of conversations to be going on. And actually now we have a solid convert clients in 24 hours strategy where they don't ever have a call associate. Not because we don't trust them, we do things differently. And on Monday, I'm going to be sharing how we do that in our challenge. And there's going to be an opportunity for people to get hold of that strategy as well. But it works really well. And it was just something, and I like to think about when you do get burned, you have to treat it a little bit as something you've learned along the way, and it makes you better. It makes your business better because you start running your business.
I agree, and I think everything's a learning curve, isn't it, when you're running a business? And there is so much we have changed. If you go back right back, there's so much that has changed. Like if you were to write it down, you'd go, oh my God, I can't believe we used to do it like that. Like, so everything is a learning curve, but that's just what it is when you're running a business. But and we did massively learn from that, and we changed it. But then we did get stung again, didn't we, with somebody else?
So yeah, we got stung a couple of times. The next one was a woman who we had 2 big clients coming in. They signed up, money in the bank. We matched them up. She said she was a tech VA, and my God, she wasn't.
I'm more technical than she
and
is.
so we lost it. And the issue with that was, it was all about, I'm massive on integrity. So we didn't actually lose both clients. We lost one. But I knew she was still matched with the other client, and I couldn't, in all good conscience, allow that relationship to go ahead. So I knew that I'd probably lose the client if I was honest with them. And I was honest with them, and I said, look, unfortunately, this VA doesn't have the skill set we thought they did. We'd like to match you with someone else. And the client was not interested, and they left. But I'd much rather have done that than allow that to continue, knowing it was going to fail and it would bring my brand into question. Again, I learned a lot from that, and that's when our vetting process changed, because we knew we couldn't be just having a CV and then saying, oh, well, that's it, whatever they've wrote down is gospel. So we really changed that, and now we haven't, well, I think it's so stringent, barely anyone gets to it. Then we had things like, so we had one of the things that happens, and I'm going to be really honest here, if people thinking about working with associates, is you're going to get associate VAs. The reason they're associates is probably because of 2 things. 1, they're new, or they're struggling to get clients, and 2, they don't want to market themselves. They are introverted, and it's not in their nature to want to push themselves out there. But they're going to learn a lot from you, and they may well get to that point. And instead of worrying, I think instead of worrying that, what if you build that person up and give them enough training and experience? Because I'm a go high level expert, and I've had VAs that have never touched it, and then we've showed them how, and they've gone off and left us because now they know enough to go and add a notch to their belt. You can't take that personally. I think you have to say, well, you have to accept that you've probably trained them up and they've moved on, and respect the fact they're running their own businesses, and see that as a good thing, really, that they've learned from you. And I think if you can nurture that relationship, and respect that fact, and know it, and be honest with yourself, it's probably going to happen, but still maintain a good relationship. You never know what will come of that relationship in the future, even when they've left you. So I think you got to not take that personally. But we have had VAs that have worked with us, and then we thought they were lovely, they've left, and on good terms, and then we've had clients tell us, I just thought you ought to know that they were asking if I wanted to go and work with them direct.
I just can't, I don't, I can't fathom that. I don't understand what would even enter someone's head to do that to somebody, that particularly when you've worked so closely with somebody that, they've trained you up, you've got that, personal relationship, you know a bit about each other's family and all that kind of thing. And then that they do that, I would be, well, we've had it, and I was just devastated by that. Like, it was like a really kind of bad thing, wasn't it? For me, we completely differ on this topic, which is very, very rare for us, that I take it really personally. If I'd trained somebody, right, and they'd gone from this to this, and then they went and did what I was doing, I'd be really pissed off.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, this is where collaboration can go wrong, because I've had to learn not to take things personally, and I did take the last time this happened to me very personally, and that's because it was very close to home. So the last time, and it feels like it was still yesterday, it's that raw, but it was, I think we're 2 years now, believe it or not, when it happened, is I had somebody in the business that was actually my invoicing manager. So they worked on my invoicing. I would never have had, in a million years, a VA do that job, because the person doing that job had so much access to my entire CRM system, all my client database, my sales pipeline, my past clients. They had obviously information about what they were paying, what my team were getting paid. And so it had to be somebody that wasn't a VA. However, that person was close to me personally. And then I did give them some VA work, which is probably my mistake, thinking, they weren't interested in running a business or anything like that. In fact, we had that conversation about it. They were doing quite well. They had a particular skill set, a particular niche, if they wanted to do that. And we had a conversation on a Friday, and I said to them, you ought to think about going off and starting on your own in your particular niche. This person said to me that they weren't interested, and by the Sunday, I found out they'd started their own business. By the Wednesday, they were fully incorporated, limited company website, everything, and hadn't once had the decency to say to me, oh, by the way, thinking about it on reflection, I think I am going to go start my own business. And had they done that, I would have then had the chat with, that's great, I'll support you, like I have with all my associates. But obviously, there's a conflict of interest with the invoicing side, so I'd need you, we'd have to stop that, but I'm happy to give you client work. In fact, that person didn't tell me any of that. And the only reason I could come to in my head was to keep that access to the system. So I had to lock out of it. I never got an apology. I got a business is business at the end of the day. That's what they eventually said. And it's had massive repercussions, huge repercussions. And then 2 weeks later, because they were still working with the client, so it's not easy to just sack them off when they're working with the client. So they were still working with one of my clients. And then 2 weeks later said to me, myself and this client have decided we're going to go into a brand partnership together. What that really means is you're just stealing that client, because you shouldn't be doing any business together outside of my agency. I know that this person ended up doing basically all the same services I was offering, told people that wasn't the case, and now does things the way she should have done them in the beginning, which is in her niche. What a shame that she couldn't just realise that in the beginning, and now works with associates. And you think, well, I hope you've reflected and think about and live with that every day. That caused a lot of pain, and we ended up not working with associates for a while. So we just said, by fluke, most of them had gone off anyway. And so we just sucked the clients back in. You and I decided to collaborate differently. The way we ran the business was very even then. And it took me some time to get past that before I could trust people again. And I'm really lucky because, again, I learned from that experience. One of the things I realised was that I'd been absent. I'd been the CEO and not the team leader. So I was expecting you to do more, have more conversations with the team, and I wasn't really there. So I've learned a lot from every one of those experiences, and I honestly could not stress this enough. And I hope they're listening. Alison, Sarah, Demi, Leanne, all of you, if I've missed anyone, are amazing, and I've got the most amazing team of associates. I am so bloody lucky. So it is difficult, and you are always going to be in competition with other VAs, always. And I think even if you collaborate, you know that you're competing. So it's how you do it.
See, for me, when that happened, I think that whole thing that happened was going on way longer. Because I do, and I remember saying to you at the time, I'm not technical, as everybody knows, but the way that particular website had been set up was not a quick, done it in a few hours. That was like full on. I remember saying to you, nah, this has been going on a lot longer. And I think, even I was nervous about that situation anyway, and I was very open and honest with you because that's the kind of relationship we have. And it made me distrust people within the team, which is no reflection on them at all, but it did make me question them. And I remember thinking, I'm going to have to go back, look through everybody, see, because it knocked us, didn't it? Because we did put all that trust in that particular person for various reasons. but it made me question. And then people come in and I couldn't hear from people, and I'd be like, what they doing? Are they stealing clients? And it does knock you, but it's a learning curve. It is all a learning curve. And sometimes I think I'm glad that happened. I wasn't really great to be called a lapdog and all of that rubbish and all that. I remember we were laughed about that for ages. Absolutely cracked us up. Anyway, and but I'm kind of, sometimes I think I'm glad things like that happen to us, because it makes us go, right, we did it wrong. We regrouped, we looked at it, we remodeled, we did everything differently. And now I agree, we've got the best team we've ever had. Like, they're just amazing.
They are so good. And like, even recently, one of our ladies, they were in our system, so they only get access to their own clients in our system, not to all the clients. And somehow, because tech happened, she got access to everything. And she told us, and she was honest about it. And she could have took that information and she didn't, and she just said, look, just so you know, I think I can see a little bit more than I should. And that's when you're doing things right, and when collaborating with people does really work. So I think the learning is, look, you're always in competition with the VAs, because it's just the nature of the beast. But if you can create a loyal team, and that's what it's all about, if you can create a loyal team that have a sense of they don't want to do you wrong, then I think that's important if you're going to be working with associates. I mean, when we spoke to Wendy, she's only ever worked with employees, and she got bitten too. So it can happen. I mean, she's in court at the moment with that. But I think the learning for me, there were a few things. One was that I stopped vetting people the way I did. So we changed that policy completely. Now we have our processes where people fill in the join us form on our website. It's all very automated, so we only have 3 manual touch points in the whole process. Everything else is automated. They come into the system. We do a brief check on what they've responded. We place a tag on them, which pushes them through an automation to say if we're happy to go ahead from that point. They then get an email from us to say, can you send us your experience profile? So we don't ask for CVs. I think it's a waste of time asking VAs for CVs. What difference does it make? Their experience profile is what's important. It tells us, explicitly what they know about being a VA and their experience, what they can bring to the table. We look at that. We look at what they filled in on their forms, and we do a little bit of digging, because what we're looking for is what you're saying makes sense. Because I can't tell you the amount of VAs that say, I'm a tech VA, I can do, and you look at their website and you think, Jesus, if you're a tech VA, I've got problems, right? And then that's not going to work. And so we look at that, and then we say, okay, we're happy to go further. They then have to fill in a scenario-based questionnaire. This questionnaire we designed to specifically weed out people that might not be being honest about their skill set. And it's at that point we lose a lot of people. They either don't fill it in, or we know that they're not being honest about their skill set. But a lot of people do get through, and they end up, joining the team, or being, on our bank of approved virtual assistants. And the reason we changed things up a lot is we didn't want to have VAs feeling like they had to have tech or marketing to join us. So that's why we had our Simply Admin plan. So VAs that just have admin and nothing else can also join the team. And by doing that, it's made it more inclusive. So the vetting process has definitely helped. The other thing we do is we don't have client and VAs speak on the phone anymore until a client's paid. So instead we record a video, and that goes out to the client. And we have a process that literally will get that client signed in 48 hours. And I am more present in the team. So we have our chat channel. We're all very supportive with one another in there. We meet up on Zoom once a month. I'm not an untouchable leader. I'm there. If anyone, the amount of times the team members have said, can we just have a call? I'm struggling with something. And I'm never going to be that person that's, oh no, I'm so busy. I'm too busy for you. And I probably was being that person before, being honest. I probably was. So I think all of those ingredients have made us this magical.
Yeah, and you're right. You aren't like, you're CEO, but we're all such a good team together. And I think, because you're approachable and you help us all out, you listen to all of us. The amount of times we've come on calls and one of the girls has been upset or whatever, and that's what makes it a good team, that you are approachable and that you do help us out. And we ask you questions and I ask you stupid questions and make stupid suggestions and you're like, no, or yes, whatever. So that is what makes a good leader. And people, that's why people want to be part of our team, because we are a strong team, we are a good business, and we all work really well together.
Yeah, but even though that happens, I can't lie, there's times I'm suspicious. If a VA decides that they're leaving the team because they've got, I don't know, issues, or they want to concentrate more on their own clients, and then their client leaves at the same time, that's exactly what happens. That's where you go to in your brain. And I think you do have to get to a point of acceptance with some of this and try and build in as many layers to your agreements together as you've got. I mean, one of them we've got is they can go and work together, but they have to pay us 6 months of the cost it would have been if we'd have kept that client. So you can essentially buy out the client and do it the right way. But this is very much talking about working with associates. I still want to come back just before we finish to collaboration. I think for me, if you can find a way to collaborate with another VA on a project, or whatever it is, combining your services, running an event, whatever that might be, and you can maintain some control over that situation and not give too much up. White labeling is a good one, because you're always the middleman. There's never that direct contact between them. I think it's a good thing, but I think you always have to have your wits about you.
I think, yeah, you're right. I mean, it's not something I would be comfortable doing, just because that's just the way I am. I'm not suspicious of everybody, but I would just be wary, I think, is probably the best way to describe it. But again, that's just my opinion. It works for some people it doesn't work for, but it's the way forward.
Yeah, and there's other ways. I mean, you can collaborate with VAs by the way that you offer services. So Leanne, who's coming on next week, she runs a travel business as well. So she will work with VAs to bring them into that travel business, and that's very much a collaborative kind of relationship to have. And actually, I think if you're going to collaborate with a VA that's got lots of experience, they can be a really good role model and really help you on your journey. So I don't think collaboration is a bad thing. I think it's a good thing. I think in general, the VA community is really supportive.
Yeah,
I really do. I really do think on the whole, it's supportive. What I will do is say, be mindful of fake pretending communities that have got an agenda. So there is, I'm not going to name this person, but they're a well-known VA. They've got a Facebook group. And apparently it's for VAs that are being a community. You can come in there. It's a load of bollocks, right? Because I've posted in that. We run this VA Live Lounge, and the reason we run this Live Lounge every week is to help the VA community. Okay, so one of the rules in her group was to give more than you take. So I posted about this podcast, because this gets repurposed as a podcast. This would be a great one. I think the episode was about charging up front, which, well, you know how I feel about that. And it would be really helpful for VAs. And she wouldn't allow the post to go through, cited the rules, give more than you take. And I thought, well, that is giving. So the next time I post in there, I hope this is okay, because I just want to, let people know about this episode. And she just banned me from the group. And you're like, wow. And do you know why? Because she runs her own podcast. And that is what she's seeing that then as competition and not collaboration. And actually, if you're truly trying to help that VA community, it shouldn't just be that you're only posting in there what you want to post and what you allow in that way. Whereas Darren's VA community is extremely supportive. No problem posting, letting people know. He has one rule, which I fully respect. And that's, please just don't promote your own community group. And that's understandable. And I've got my own community group, and I don't post my community group there. So be mindful of those kind of people.
Yeah.
There
God, that's the whole point of setting up a VA community is to help people. So surely the clue's in the word community.
Well, you'd think, wouldn't you? You'd think. But
I'm an idiot.
but be mindful. So I think if you can get the right relationship with the right VA, if you can become an agency and work with associates in the right way, it can work really, really well. But there's always going to be an element of competition in this industry. Personally, that's my final word on it.
That's my final word on it too.
So next week we're back, and we're going to be talking to Leanne Wright from the VA Runway, and she's going to be talking about how she built a 6-figure VA business by adding additional revenue streams. So it's going to be a really good one to tune into, because she's going to give you lots of ideas on how you can do that too. If you want to join the free VA membership, you can just head to the link in the bio. It's morethanava.org. We've got the free membership there. We've also got masterclass running on the 14th of July, how to scale your business beyond 2K months or 3K months, whatever income barrier you keep hitting. I'll leave all of these links in the show notes for the podcast, which will be out next week, or if you're listening, it's already out. And we'll see you next week at 10 o'clock.